Chad,
Yes.
I think it's time to change.
Really? Why?
Well, I mean, the desks are old.
Well,
It's stale.
yeah, it is about a year.
So I'm excited. Well, it's not totally a year. We're creeping into it.
Yeah.
We didn't start officially till like 1st of February,
But
2022.
technically, this will change probably around a year, right?
No, I'm praying that it happens sooner.
Well, I'm not in these meetings.
But no, because you have so much editing and we're hoping for reels and just make sure everything. We have other, it's like we've got people for that.
See, and this is a great example of me pitching an idea
and
walking
then
away.
running away.
Running away, yes.
You shouldn't say pitching it, dropping a bomb.
Yes.
And then letting us
away.
pick up the pieces.
Yes.
There's still some shrapnel in one of the guys' leg.
Oh, I saw him walking in today.
But it was awesome because I was praying, like, okay, God, you've given us this ministry. If this is you, where are we going? I'm running out of the next thing.
Yeah.
And then that morning, about 20 minutes into your let's catch up, you're like, it's time to change.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be that place that's like, we're going to tell you something without telling you the full thing, as if we're holding back the most deepest, darkest ideas and inventions that no one else has thought of.
Right.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
We're moving away from a desk scene to more of a
and also trying
couch
to personalize the other shows.
Right.
So it not just be, everything looks the same.
And we love the rotating logo and
great.
what it's done for us in this year.
Yeah.
But it
was a huge upgrade. Like you look at it's kind of funny because when you're sitting in something that's was a huge upgrade, you can start to kind of feel like it's almost like inadequate. But then you think back a year before and it's like the GoPros and the ring lights and
just say it. Just say the cereal boxes.
The cereal boxes.
Why did that rub everybody the wrong way?
I never had a problem with it, honestly.
But it's one of the most commented things.
Because that wasn't what I was focused on. I was focused on all the other things.
No, I get you.
And so I was like, oh, that's fine. At least it's consistent.
So if you don't know, we used to have cereal boxes because it was the only thing I could think of that was cheap background.
Yeah.
And everyone's eating cereal.
Yeah.
And everybody has a cereal that they love.
Yeah.
And they don't care for. But I thought it got what I wanted out of it. I just didn't know it rubbed everybody the wrong way.
People had so many opinions on it, and I was fascinated by it because I never really thought about it the way people thought about it. And I was like, now I was, cameras falling off because they're taped, things like that. Like
Christmas Dollar Tree tape.
Christmas Dollar Tree tape, all the craziness. And then because we even moved in here before we actually did this.
We did.
And we made a set, and then we painted the wall.
Yep.
And it was reflective, and it was awful. And then it was like, okay, we have to repaint it. And then we did this, and it's just like, it's crazy.
So we're telling all of these stories for a purpose, and a specific purpose is it's time to change.
It is.
We have to know the times that we're living in.
Yep.
Most of us, especially if you're watching us, is using a social media platform.
Yep.
There's nothing better than meeting someone who's like, I don't believe in social media. And I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But don't expect to get your message out through the radio, even TV, billboard, newspaper.
Yeah.
You got to be a little bit wise, fight fire with fire.
Even the billboards and stuff now, they're electronic and they go in 2 seconds because they know putting one thing up there now is like a waste of time at this point because no one's sitting there and watching it. So it's like it needs to rotate because when you drive back, you see something new.
Right.
So those people are getting smarter.
Right.
It's and it also digitizes everything because we're all used to technology now. So it's
I get to sell the billboard 20 times compared to one time.
Exactly, 100%. Because it's funny too because there was a spot in the town that I lived in where there was always a billboard. And I never knew it was there until they changed it to a digital billboard. I just, for some reason, never saw it. And then they were like, it was digital. I was like, oh, they're like, no, that's always been there. They just converted it to digital. I was like, there's always been a billboard there? They're like, yeah. It's like, oh, I never saw it.
But in the mundane parts of our lives, we get kind of stuck in a rut of, oh my gosh, what is it going to take to change? So you brought this idea, knowing it really wasn't going to add that much work to your table. It was going to add more to Vinny and Brian, adding these
on
walls,
the front end,
on the back end. But once we build multiple sets, you will have work.
Yeah.
But I think we get like, what is on the other side? Do I really know what it's going to entail?
And the other thing too is you start to say, okay, well, is it worth it? Because then you start to count the costs. You start to count, the amount of effort, the amount of planning, and you're going, okay, is it really worth it? But then it's like, yeah, because it adds this, and so like we even started with saying like the reasons why. So like we didn't even really particularly say like this is what it would look like. We were more like, this is the reasons we should do it.
Right.
Before we even said, okay, this is what it should be. It's like, oh yeah, well, it would benefit us here, here, here. Look, we'd be able to do this and this and this. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, let's do it. And then it's like, okay, yeah, it benefits us here, here, and here. Rather than, because a lot of times I think people will see it on the opposite side and they'll be like, well, what does it take away from us?
Right.
And we were like, no, like, what does it add to us?
Right.
And then we'll deal with what it takes away from on the other side.
It depends what kind of person. If you're a bean counter, first thing is like, how much is this costing me?
Right.
And why?
Yeah.
And then you have to sell it.
Yeah.
Visionaries are like, okay, this is where the tide is turning. Do I want to be on the front end of the crowd, or do I want to be what looks like my grandparents?
And the funny thing too is like, it was a conversation we had 6 months ago.
Right.
Where it's like, hey, we should put some chairs up here. We should change the vibe. And what we ended up doing instead was we changed formats.
Right.
So we're like, okay, let's not change the set yet.
Right. We were still into it fairly shortly.
And so like we knew so that was the point where like we made a decision where, hey, it's wiser to change something else than to change what we were saying.
Right.
So had we done it then, it's like maybe then we wouldn't be to the level of, say, content that we're at now.
Correct.
Because we focused on our content and now we're changing the background.
Right.
Instead of the opposite way. We change the set and then we focus on our content. So
thank you, our man here showing the whole set so you understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
so
I think what a lot of people lose in their personal lives, in their business, of course we know all of us are in ministry, is you have to evolve.
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing worse walking into a church and it smells dusty, moldy, and they haven't chose to upgrade anything. Yeah. And it's kind of like they're always like, well, do you know how much it costs right now?
Right.
As if Christ doesn't know that inflation went up, that Christ didn't know what time we're in.
Yeah.
But they are not looking to the future. They're living in the past.
Yeah.
And that's what's sad about especially Christian people.
Yeah.
They don't evolve as quickly as the world does.
No, and like, so I was recently at a church where I was helping cast their vision for the future, year, and they have they're basically called their next gen building, which is all their, young adults and kids and all that stuff, and they have a little academy there. And the pitch the pastor made is the building was 35 years old,
right?
And they had done renovations, I think 8 years prior, and stuff like that. But he was saying like, if you have a 35-year-old house, you got to change some things. Like you got to renovate, you got to update some things. Like there's things you have to do to keep it going. So it's the same thing when it comes to facilities, especially facilities that are used throughout the week, like 7 days a week, and that are used by kids and like people that are wrecking things, So it's like, it's that type of thing when it comes to, when you're mentioning churches, like that stuff has to be renovated. Because it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, why do we need to renovate the foyer? Why do we need to renovate the bathrooms? It's like, because it's 25 years old,
right?
Or because it's outdated and things are not, like you said, musty, and there's all kinds of things that can come with that. But it's like you want to build something where you're able to this generation is reached by it, and then when it goes on to the next generation, okay, let's change it, remodel it for the next generation,
right?
It's just that type of mindset, and like you said, there's a lot of people that don't think that way. They think on the finances side versus like, hey, if we dream it up, God's going to fulfill it.
Right.
Because like the thing is like, it's if you believe in it, typically the people that are going to be able to help you build it will come alongside you.
Correct.
So like if you say, hey, this is the vision, and specifically with this church, like, hey, this is the vision, this is our why, this is how we're doing it, this is the fruit of the things that we've done, help us. Like, and there's a way to approach that where it's like, because I was a part of the church that redid their foyer. And my gosh, was it needed? Like, oh my goodness, like it was so outdated.
When you can take that into a lot of business ideas, just the whole, even personally, how we approach. Like I remember when I was in my 20s working out, we didn't look at macros. There wasn't those type of understanding. Now there's so much advice through the internet. You can have a full blown understanding in 1 hour just watching YouTube.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I think what happens is, for some reason, believers get stuck in this rut. Jesus is coming back.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But if you look at, and this is what I found too, is like, let's say that there's young people, or it doesn't matter what age, they were quick to social media.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people bragging like, I was the first one on Facebook. Great.
Yep.
Their ministry stopped growing because they didn't take the next big leap, because that was...
Yep. They weren't paying attention to the trends.
Or it's too risky.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's super easy when it's a one individual. There's not a lot of risk. But like here, you know, we've got 4 people. We're trying to evolve. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more pressure. What if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
And I don't think you can look at life as if it doesn't work. And that means you're not thinking Christ is for us.
Yeah. I mean, because but like with that example, like you had things where like when Facebook and all the social media first started, you know, you could organically grow things. I mean, I even think of YouTube now as a great example, but Facebook specifically, like you could organically grow things. Then they started to put paywalls in, and then it was like you could reach, you know, 30% of your followers or likes if, you know, you didn't pay. And then it was 25,
right?
It was 20, and then now it's like 5%. So now it's like if you didn't realize back then that you had to start paying to play a little bit, then your page is dead. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause if you didn't catch on, then all the people that did catch on that were at your same level are now way beyond you. And now you're sitting here going, why are only 2 people liking my post when it used to be 300?
Well, go back to the way the gram works.
Oh, yeah.
It's all real heavy. It's all videos.
Yep.
And there's people who are like, well, I'm still going to post my picture.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
You just might not have people notice you.
Yep.
And it's like we have to evolve because people consume things differently.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting, and I find that as an individual, we accept things easily. But when we're trying to push the narrative outside, I don't know why it makes it awkward.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Like
so like
it's the hive mind. It's like having to pitch something to like something that everyone thinks the same way, or the perception is the same.
So like I did I don't know why I did a dive on Starbucks. And so they were talking about like the main idea was to bring the coffee smell into the coffee shop. And in the 80s, it was black coffee done weak in a gas station typically, and nobody knew the brand. And the idea was, can we have a consistent smell and taste that no matter where you went, it was the same thing.
It's good.
And then they said they saw a huge uptick when they started their reward system.
Ah, of course.
And it was like, well, why would you want a reward system for coffee?
Yeah.
Now there's a reward system for every person. And I'm not sticking to one, but I'm saying they evolved in an industry that was not there. They built their own industry. And I think we have to look and say, okay, I feel bad that like the TBNs, the God TV, they're still stuck to their parents' way of watching. There's still a desk in a big studio. They could probably cut 90% of their cost and do something differently. Then there's another narrative that, well, there's no television out there broadcasting. This was a year ago in 4K. So why do we need 4K cameras?
Right.
But there's a big difference even from 4K to 6K.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, why in the cinematic realm are they using what?
Oh my gosh, they're up to like 12K now.
But it's crisper. You can tell the technology behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
because even if you down convert 4K to 1080, the 4K is still sharper. Everything about it, your color information, like the whole nine is better. And so that's what a lot of people don't understand. The other side to that is most of the stuff consumed, especially really, I mean, in the Christian world, is all on demand, right? Well, on demand is 4K. It's been 4K for a very long time.
Right.
YouTube. And so it's funny because I've heard that argument. A church that'll be like, well, you know, we want to upgrade, but like, we're not going to stream 4K. It's like, okay, but you're going to post your sermons? Yeah. Okay, you're going to post your worship set? Yeah. Okay, so you're telling me you're going to post archives? Yes. So you can post in 4K.
Right.
So you can stream in 1080, record in 4K, and upload in 4K. So it's like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, and now, and the other crazy thing too is that there are streamers now, like YouTube and stuff, that are starting to slowly but surely accept 2160p, and then it'll slowly go up to consumer 4K. And so it's like, why not have the technology? Like, because that's the thing, churches will upgrade, but then they'll say like, oh, or even not even churches, but studios, they'll upgrade, but they'll have the mindset of like, well, we don't need to stream in 4K, so why get 4K cameras,
right?
Or why get cameras that are fully functional at 4K, right? And so it's interesting.
We talk a lot about church because that's the world that came out of,
yeah.
But like in my own pool business, we used to have everybody use their own personal vehicles, and we would reimburse them tires and gas money.
Yeah.
But because of the amount of work we were doing, when we bit the bullet of buying work vehicles, our efficiency went up through the roof because now that we didn't have breakdowns, we didn't have people like, I don't feel like it. I don't know if I want. Now it's like, hey, there's no excuses. Like, this is a work truck.
Nope.
You know, yes, we're going to have to, pay the payment, pay the insurance. We're already paying tires and maintenance.
Right.
But it's like you have to commit. And that's really what I want to get across. You got to commit to growth.
Yeah.
And the second you stop growing, you're dying. You can't pause.
That's a good thing, is because like I think that's a good way, because people will ask a lot of times, well, how do I know how to change or when to change or what to change? And I think that's perfect. It's like the growth test.
Right.
Is what you're changing growing your company, your business, your brand, yourself? Like, and if it's not, then it's probably not the right change.
Correct.
Because if you're not growing, if you're just going, because like, I mean, the great example is what we said with this, where it's like we had to grow in our content and our strength of our content before we grew the backdrops and the stage and everything. Because it's like, why not? We had to make a decision of, do we grow in this area or do we grow in this area? And will it stunt your growth? Like, so I think that's the good thing to look at changes. Go, okay, what am I changing? Okay, how does it help me grow? Where am I growing?
Right.
And the thing too is like, it's okay if like it feels like you're growing beyond where you should be. Like in that sense of like, oh, I'm growing too much in this change. Well, it's like, well, can you handle it? Like, is it something like that you're scared of, or something you can't do?
Right.
Because there is that difference. You have to determine that difference in yourself. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a stretch, but is it a realistic stretch?
Well, and you got to figure out what you want out of this life. You got to figure out personally, ministerially, whatever your invention or being involved in. And a lot of times we're limited because of fear. We don't know what the other side looks like.
Right.
But the biggest compliment that I get from what we do here is, man, I can't believe what you guys do out of this. We have a 1,200 square foot footprint. And the one thing people go is like, I remember, they remember what last year's model, and we're already into version 19. Like, we're constantly, and it's like, let's push the envelope as much as we can. And not everything has to change. Like in our business, like we still don't do ads. You know, we don't market our company, but our revenue's coming up. We're still growing. So you don't have to do it just because. But you need to know where you need to upgrade when it's time to change, because you can't stay in what worked. Like, you know, if I go back 20 years ago, me and my dad were working out of our pickup trucks. That doesn't work when you have 80 plus employees.
It doesn't scale well.
Right. Like, and I think when I look at what we're about to attempt is we want to have 6 studios still in the same footprint. We just got smarter and wiser.
Still have a shirt company.
Still have offices. We have 3 offices. You know, if we count your space, it's an office and a studio. So we got like
100%.
But I think it's asking the Lord for wisdom. I'm out here crying to God, okay, God, do this. You come in. Wasn't my idea. And I think a lot of times in the grand scheme of things is when you work with teams, don't try it to always be your idea.
Right.
And I think that's where you really get clogged. Is a lot of people want it to be their idea,
100%.
their style. And it's like, if you have a team, use the team.
All right.
And so like you brought the vision. I'm like, that would work. There'll be multiple people involved in partaking of it. And it takes a team. You know, in the world, we have a saying, it takes a village. Find your tribe. Well, utilize what God's given you. If it's a one individual, then okay, look for the second person that is familiar with you, or is a balance.
And I mean, I think I've talked about it on the Back Pocket podcast before, but it's in the sense of like, you have to see where where you fit in a job or in a description or like in a creative space, in the sense of, am I the one to pitch it and then walk away? Am I the one to get pitched to and then figure out creatively how to do it? Am I the one to clean up that? You know, so like there's all these different roles, and we'll play sometimes multiple roles. Like, and sometimes we have to play one, or we don't play one at all, and we're just here to help and assist the people that are playing the roles. And I think that's one important thing, especially like if you're working for someone or under someone or for a business, is like sometimes, you're going to be able to lead certain things, but sometimes you're just the one to pitch it. Like, you don't have to be the one that does it. And I think
Right.
that's a lot of times it comes down to like the credit argument of like, oh, I want credit, or, this is my idea. And it's like, well, sometimes it's just your idea just to give to somebody else and them execute it, and so it's just one of those things of like trying to find your space in the change, if that makes sense. Like your role in the change.
And the way I look at change to kind of like put a bow on it is I want to be on the forefront.
Yes.
So like in like we talked about, like my business, we're not using ads because we don't need to. There's other parts where we're doing things that, we don't need a lot of technology, but what we're doing is we're sitting on inventory because of the era that we're living in. So we had to like spend money in that realm. I know in our local church, we don't have a huge video wall. We're still using a projector, but we don't need to spend that money on. And so like you have to be,
because honestly, I've had people ask me when I've done Instagram stories and stuff, I'd have tech people message me and say, is that an LED wall? Mm-hmm. Like because it looks like one. Right. So it's like, what's the point? Like it's still, it looks like one. I mean, it quacks like a duck. It's like, why change? Right. Especially when there's other things to upgrade, there's other things to do. It's like, why spend $100,000 on something that won't look that much different?
I know a ministry doing the Lord's work, but he invested $25,000 in his video wall. Mm-hmm. He's holding a service once a week.
Yeah.
But he wanted a video wall so bad.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, you're choosing to be the stick figure, and you're definitely going to get branded as a minister. Oh, yeah. You're not going to break into other realms in that setting. Yeah. And it's like, when I look at the future, it's like, I want to be associated so that other people fall into our bucket. So we need to look at what the world is doing. Yep. We don't have to be them. Yeah. But we don't want to have a pulpit.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'm like, hey, Chad, sit out in the audience. Or like we have the high top chairs, and we've got our laptops and Bible. And it's like, you got to kind of work to find how to get in and be very creative. Yeah. But it doesn't mean, I think what happens is creative people think money.
Yeah.
I got to spend a lot of money to be creative. And I think you need to ask the Holy Spirit, what can we do?
For sure.
What we're about to do is going to be paint.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to get done for under $600.
Yeah, exactly. And we could have been like, oh, let's get LED panels.
Like, right. Well, we thought about it for a minute. We were going to do a video wall.
Yeah.
And now,
it's like, what's the point of doing a video wall? Like, so I agree. Like, I think sometimes, like, when you look at ideas, you're like, you have to almost peel it back and go, okay, what is the purpose of this? And then go, okay, can we do something that accomplishes the same thing?
Correct.
And that's how you talk things out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even if you have to do it with yourself, like, you talk things out. You know, like because I think a lot of times we will land on an idea, and then we have to have it that way.
Correct.
Because I've worked with leaders that it's like, even if I bring them something, and then I bring them, say, a change. Mm-hmm. Well, no, this is how you pitched it. And I was like, well, wait, like, there's an additional side to this. And it's like, well, maybe we didn't. No, I like that. And it's like, it wasn't even their idea, but they become attached to it.
Correct.
And then it's like, they don't want to change anything. So it's just, it's tough because, and when you work with people like that, you have to obey them. Like, it is what it is. But when you can change, though, when you have control over it, be okay with it. Be okay with, sleeping on something and then going, maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we do this.
Correct.
And I think that's where we just have to change our mindsets.
Well, and that's where I really wanted to get the point across is it's time to change.
Yeah.
We got to think to the future.
Yeah.
And not live in the high school stories of like, man, you remember when I was the football player?
I could throw a football over them mountains.
Or, in the ministry world, it's talking about the crusade that happened a decade ago.
Yeah.
Or it's my business used to be. Yep. And it's like, if you're not today advancing or you're not happy with any part of it, it's time to change.
100%.
And that doesn't mean change locations, change, maybe you were doing A, but now we're going to do B. Yeah. Maybe the change has to come inside of you.
100%.
And a lot of it has to be reflected as like, okay, God, am I doing exactly what you've asked me to do? Am I outside of my calling, my blessing? Yeah. And a lot of times that's where we go, well, I thought God was in it and God didn't bless me. Well, God's rain is always pouring down rain, but I can be outside of that rain and still feel the dew, but that doesn't mean I'm actually getting saturated. So my encouragement is change.
Yep.
That doesn't mean it costs thousands of dollars, but listen to what the Holy Spirit is bringing you. And it might come through a Chad. It might come through somebody who, I'll always remember this. I'm doing a home show. It's the very first one. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this guy's a believer or if he was even a Christian at all. He starts prophesying, I see you building this trailer and it's going to be so big that's going to stop you. So I had a display that it would have fit Barbie's dolls. And he's like, no, what you're about to do will be so big, people will have to stop. And I just heard it. And it wasn't for my mom reminding me that, hey, remember that guy was telling you when I was building the display on a semi-trailer? And it's like, we forget that the Bible says, I'll even use a donkey to talk to you. If I'll do whatever it takes. And I wasn't calling the guy a donkey, but you can have a stranger give you the next chapter of life if we're listening.
Yeah, I've even had it. It's as funny as it sounds. Like I'll be listening to a podcast or listening to something and I'll tune out and I'll come back in. And the context of what the person's saying is having nothing to do with what like they're talking about.
Right.
But like in my head,
right,
I hear something, they say something, and it means something completely different than the way they said it. And then it fixes, like in the sense of like, oh, I can do that. And it's like, they didn't even mean that.
Correct.
But I tuned out and then I came back in and I heard the string of sentences and it triggered something in me. Mm-hmm. So even like that, because the same thing, I've been movie quotes. Like I'll be totally like not even paying attention to the movie and I'll hear something and I'm like, oh, that fits what I'm doing.
Right.
And it's like, and it didn't even have, if you say it in that context, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense for me in my situation. So,
yeah, that's good because we don't know what we need when we need it.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit will always bring it to us and he knows how to communicate to us.
Yeah.
So if we're feelers, we're going to get it through feeling. If we're seeing, if we're audible, even reading. So I really encourage you, spend this holiday season preparing for the next year. I know, we know the next year is upon us, but let's not wait to 2023 to say like, we're going to change. We're going to write the New Year's resolutions. Let's start preparing our hearts for what God can do in us, through us, with our ideas, our businesses, our ministries, whatever you're a part of. And if you're not a part of something, get plugged in. It always feels amazing. It feels exciting when we're a part of a community and we're seeing our passions come alive with fellow, believers. I know not too long ago, Vinny went to a hockey game. You love to do things with people. Yep. We were a part of a community rally, right or wrong, how it goes. Yeah. When there is unison, you're like, man, we can do this.
Yeah, it's fun to do things together.
Yeah, and so I really encourage you, get plugged in, find people that are like-minded, and see what God can do with you. So don't forget to like, share everything that you heard today. Don't forget to check out Chad's Back Pocket. We also got Lexus to Speak Life. And we're excited for what God's about to do with us. See ya.